is Buzz Jacobs. Buzz Jacobs is the co-director of Benghazi 9/11, Benghazi9-11.com. And Buzz, we've been talking about this since the horrible tragedy of the attack, the terrorist attack on Benghazi that took place during the election of 2012, September 11th. Your thoughts on the interview in general?
Well, Crane, it's good to be with you as always.
Good to be
Thank
with
you.
you,
I thought that nothing surprises me anymore when it comes to what Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama are willing to say or do about Benghazi, and I thought that her responses were sadly expected in many ways, but also shockingly cold and dismissive in other regards.
Let's get to that one real quick, okay? The shockingly cold and dismissive, because I've put together a montage, a lot to say, little time montage of the clips. It doesn't change the meaning of the question asked, as you well know, because I sent you these and we talked about this interview, well, since we heard about it, and having you on to respond to it. So I want to go right to it. But this opens with a question about Chris Stevens. And speaking of being dismissive and quite cold, and then it shifts to the issue of the attack, the warning, etc. Here is part one, if you will, of our coverage of the interview with Hillary Clinton on Benghazi. Roll it.
Chris Stevens, never-ending security threats. Right. But he was there. 11. Right. And of his own choosing. There were cables being sent. Did you miss it? Did you miss the moment to prevent this from happening?
No, but I think as the independent board that investigated every aspect of this, including all the cables, concluded, there was a lack of appreciation and response to the level of threat. Now, there were a lot of...
By you, too?
Well, no, that was never brought to me.
She says she did not see that August cable, but she relied on her staff, the security professionals, to do the job.
Is there anything you personally should have been doing to make it safer in Benghazi?
Well, what I did was give very direct instructions that the people who have the expertise and experience in security apply it. Well, that is personal, though, Diane. I mean, I am not, I'm not equipped to sit and look at blueprints where the blast walls need to be or where the reinforcements need to be. That's why we hire people who have that expertise.
But the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, said he was surprised the Secretary of State didn't know about that August cable.
Are you stunned that she didn't?
I would call myself surprised that she didn't.
Okay.
She insists that delegating security to the staff didn't mean she wasn't concerned.
But that doesn't mean I wasn't saying all the time, we've got to make sure we secure this spot and that spot.
Sounds like she's contradicting herself, but let's start with the initial, hey, Chris Stevens was there, that he was there because he wanted to be there, but they wanted to set up a post there. Tell me, Buzz, your interpretation.
Well, this is the cold and dismissive part. I thought that her saying that he was there of his own choosing was a very cold and dismissive answer. I mean, yes, technically that's true. He did choose to be there. But it has nothing to do with why his government failed him. You know, and you wonder, did Sean Smith choose to go to Benghazi that night, or did he go because his boss told him to? You know, and I'd say that Sean Smith and Glenn Doherty volunteered to fight against our enemy. You know, the two ex-Navy SEAL heroes. They volunteered to fight against our enemy with no support from our military because our government failed them, and they volunteered to go on a rescue mission. And they weren't, you know, they were there by their own choosing. Possibly was Sean Smith there by his own choosing? I question that. But you know, you just think about how her response, how truly cold and dismissive it is, because Ambassador Stevens was murdered by our enemy. And to say that he chose to be there is, in my opinion, a really, really poor choice of words. And I think it's reflective of her whole attitude towards Benghazi. And frankly, the president's and the White House's attitude towards Benghazi is that it's more of a nuisance than it was a real serious problem we need to level with the American people and set the facts straight.
I've heard folks in the military speak to the fact that this was one of their own, Chris Stevens. If they're going to treat him like this, what does it say overall? And I know that seems like, oh, conjecture and motives, and aren't you trying to, but this is their friend. That's what this was about. I mean, obviously everybody's life is just as important, but in the whole idea of this, you recognizing the cold and dismissive part does strike a chord, because there seems to be a lack of going through and relating to say, wait a second, oh, he was there by his own choice? Whoa. So I appreciate your insight on that, because it does speak to a greater issue. And while I'm not a touchy-feely guy, I do want some thread to say, wait a second, you just said this, and then in the transcript you'll find she follows up. Diane Sawyer follows up with, well, you're looking for a post there. You're looking for another post there. But all the same, I think that alone, that response alone does show you how she is viewing this. And while there are moments there where she reflects on Chris Stevens, don't get me wrong, in the interview, to be clear, that response is all about business and not really, hey, responsibility. And speaking to the issue of responsibility, go ahead, Buzz.
Or remorse for that point.
Yeah,
I mean,
or
you
remorse.
would think that she would say, I'm sorry. You know, we had some major failures in the State Department. And yes, I was chair. And ultimately, even if I didn't have direct knowledge of things, which I doubt, even if I didn't have direct knowledge, I still take responsibility, and I'm sorry for the family. I feel for them. That would have been an answer that would be better. It's just remarkable how arrogant the administration has been on this issue from the beginning. And when you think about it, I mean, it started about the lie.
Let's get to that, because here's the issue of where Diane Sawyer says, hey, we saw you at the funeral. The body's coming off. We saw that. We saw something in your face that spoke to us and said, wish you could have done more. Here's that exchange. Roll it.
We saw your face on that tarmac. Something that said, I should have done this differently. I would give anything on the earth to personally if I could have done this differently.
Well, I certainly would give anything on earth if this had not happened. And I certainly would wish that we had made some of the changes that came to our attention to make as a result of the investigation. But I also am clear in my own mind that we had a system, and that system, of course, ended with me. But I take responsibility, but I was not making security decisions. I think it would be a mistake for a Secretary of State to sit and say, okay, let's go through all 270 posts and let me decide what should be done. That to me is inappropriate, where the experience lies elsewhere.
But the top 10?
Top 10, but it's a constantly changing scenario.
Buzz?
Again, I hate to keep using the same word, but it seems very dismissive of me. I mean, she says she takes responsibility, but then in the very next breath, she fails to take responsibility. She blames it on others for not doing their jobs. It's a typical liberal response. It is always somebody else's fault. You never hear them saying, it's my fault, I take responsibility, and I should suffer the consequences for what I did, or at least be remorseful of it. It's always typical liberal response to blame somebody else. But in my experience, she says, well, was I supposed to go through every embassy and make sure that they were safe and secure? Yeah, that is your job, Secretary Clinton. And if you didn't, you need to put somebody who you trusted with your own life, with your own daughter's life, to make sure that your personnel are secure. That is one of her chief roles. I mean, yes, it's to be diplomat of the United States and travel around the world and go to dinner parties and meet with presidents and prime ministers and foreign ministers, but your job is to manage your people. You are the commander of your people, the people who are depending upon you. People like Sean Smith, who was a mid-level official who was dependent upon people like Secretary Clinton and others in Washington to do their jobs. And when security requests came in, they should have responded to those requests. And
do you think do you think she knew about the security request? Is it possible for her not to be aware of the deteriorating security situation that took place over months during that time?
I think it's highly improbable. If I was giving it a percentage, I would say there's probably a less than 5% chance that she was unaware of it. As John McCain has said repeatedly, when Secretary Clinton says, "I never got the cable," or "I wasn't aware of these situations," he goes, "Well, how many ambassadors in the whole world were sending you cables saying they couldn't sustain an attack?" And the answer to that is probably no others. It was probably just Ambassador Stevens. So either one of two things. If she really didn't know about it, then the staff that she picked and trusted to help her lead the department should have been held accountable for that, which nobody has been held accountable. Let's remind everybody. Or she's just lying to us, which, I hate to say it, is quite possible, because they started out this whole episode by lying to the American people, and they continue to lie to us about many things as we continue to learn, and not just Benghazi related, but IRS and other issues. So there are some there. I think the answer to your question is, I think it's highly improbable that she was not aware of this, and I think it's just an easy excuse for her to say, because they're probably, one thing about her senior staff, they're probably smart enough to not put that in the email, so we're never going to find that smoking gun email that says it, but I guarantee that they sat around a conference table at some point, and somebody briefed her on it, and she just didn't do the follow-up, probably because she's a bad manager and a bad executor, and that's what gets to the heart of this matter. And that is, in my opinion, the real reason for this cover-up from the beginning, is that it exposes their poor management ability in the Obama administration, including with Hillary Clinton.
I cannot let you go without getting your thoughts on what difference does it make, as well as where this leads in the sense of more accountability through the committee. So on the flip side of the break, Buzz, could you stick with us for 3 more minutes? Because I'd like to address that. And the reason is because you've addressed a couple things about not getting to the truth. Well, she addressed the committee and her, quite frankly, the words that she uses and the way that she says, will she testify, her approach speaks volumes. And it also speaks to what so many of us, and I know including you, because you've had your heart and soul dedicated to getting the truth out about Benghazi, which is Benghazi9-11.com, Benghazi9-11.com, as so many of us have, not about the politics, but understanding what's at play here. And that is a cover-up, and we've exposed it so many ways, including 60 Minutes and a whole host of other things. So on the flip side, I have 2 more clips for you. Can you stick with us, Buzz?
Yes, count me in.
Great, because after that, I was going to say, if you don't, man, that would be what? Come on. You'd be doing a Clinton on us. We don't want that. Thanks, buddy. On that flip side, Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, AFR Talk.